This lesson is on sketching the graph of trig functions. I find it fascinating that none of you have asked me to make a video on this, so I am guessing that you're sticking it in your calculator to figure it out, which probably takes a while to get the graph right. So it'd probably save you a lot of time if you follow the tricks here. Okay, so you always got to start off with the basic function. So the basic cosine function goes from 0 to 2 pi, and it counts by pi over 2. So 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. You're adding a half each and every time to get to the next one. Cosine starts at 1, ends at 1. In the middle, it's down at -1. And in between those, it's both at 0, making this graph right here. This function has a 1/2 outside the cosine of x. So since it's outside the function, that affects the y. And so the x doesn't change. So all your x numbers are the same, but all your y numbers are times a half. So 1 times a half, 0 times a half, -1 times a half is -1/2. 0 times a half is still 0, and then 1 times a half, which gives you all of these new numbers. So at 0, it's a half, and at pi over 2, so between 0 and pi is a half a pi. And then at pi, it goes to -1/2 and so on. And then if you noticed, I don't know if you can see barely here on the grid here, Alex was very kind to you. Not only that on all of the graphs, it split it up with the tick marks in between here to be perfect for how you need to count. It's cut into 4, and so a half of 4 tick marks takes you over 2 tick marks, and so from here to here, it was over 2 tick marks on the graph. So I just counted over 2, go over 2, go over 2 tick marks. So each and every time to make this bigger graph, what I did was I counted over 2 each and every time to just fill the whole thing in. It's kind of fun to do if you're bored. I really doubt any of you will do it, but it is entertaining to do. If we were at school, I would make you do it though. And you're going to need to do it if you ever take pre-calculus in college. You'll need to be able to sketch the graph all the way across, although I don't know, some people just make you do one repetition of it like Alex does. But anyway, that's how you'd fill the whole graph up if you ever need to. Number 2. On number 2, they changed the x on the inside of it here. The y doesn't change, but the x changes. So the y values for sine, which go from 0 to 0, and between it's 0 and 1 and -1, all of those numbers are staying the same. It didn't change. What changed here was the period on it. And period, remember, is 2 pi over b. So 2 pi over b, and the b value is what's in front of the x here, which is 2/3. So 2 pi divided by 2/3 is 3 pi. 2 divided by 2/3 is 3. And so it goes from 0 to 3 pi, and then you got to figure out what the tick marks are. So originally, the original sign goes to 2 pi, and you have to make 4 tick marks in between. Well, 4 gaps. 4 gaps are, the counts. You're going to have to skip over 4. So you had to divide, what they did was divided by 4, which made it pi over 2. So this one then, 3 pi, dividing that one by 4, gives you 3 pi over 4. So you're going to count by 3 pi over 4 each and every time. So again, it started at 0, add 3/4 pi, takes you to 3/4 pi, plus another 3/4, 1.5, plus another 3/4 takes you 2.25, plus 3/4 is 3 pi. So that's how I got all of those numbers there. So at 0, it's 0. It ends at 3 pi at 0, at 0.75, which is 3/4. And again, Alex was very kind. It cut it into 4, so all I had to do was count over 3 and go up to 1. And then knowing that I counted over 3, 1, 2, 3, I just kept counting over 3. So 1, 2, 3 took me there. 1, 2, 3, so I'm down. And then 1, 2, 3, go back up. And likewise, and so I just made all the dots and connected them up. On the next page, they added 1 to the y. So the original sine function are all of these numbers, and all the x's stay exactly the same, but the y value, it shifted it up too, because it's outside the sine x function. When it's outside that function, it affects the y. So to all the y's, I added the number 2 and then regraphed it. On the next one, it was a phase shift. And again, it's inside with the cosine function, so this affects the x. So, and we learned whatever is inside with the x, you do the opposite of it. So you're not adding 5 pi over 6 to it, you're subtracting it from all of them. So you had to do 0 minus 5 pi over 6, which takes it to negative 5 pi over 6. And then you had to take pi over 2 minus 5 pi over 6, which is negative 1/3. And then pi minus 5/6 pi was negative 1/3 pi. And then 3 pi over 2 minus 5/6 pi is 2/3 pi. And last of all, the 2 pi moved over 5/6 to 7 over 6 pi. And they have it cut into 6 blanks for it here, 6 tick marks in between 0 and pi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can barely see it, I know. You hopefully see it better on your screens at home, but they made it really convenient for you. They just fixed the whole thing up for you. All right, so it went over 5/6 pi. So, it went over negative 5/6 pi. So I got to count over 5 out of the 6 of them, and it's over at 1. And then I noticed the next one over then was negative 1/3 pi, which is 2 over 6. So 2 tick marks out of 6. And in between this one and that one, it is 1, 2, 3. So I counted 1, 2, 3, and then went down and counted 3 more. And likewise, all the way across to fill in the whole graph of the figure. Number 5. On number 5, on this one, what they did was they changed the y by multiplying by 3 over 2. So for all the y's, you have to multiply every single number by 3 over 2. So that makes that 3 over 2, which is 1/2, and negative 1 times 3 over 2 is negative 3 over 2, or negative 1.5. And this was another phase shift. So they subtracted 2 pi over 3 from all of them. So 0 minus 2 pi over 3 makes negative 2 pi over 3. Then you got to go 1/2 minus 2/3, which takes to negative 1/6. And then you got 1 pi. So 1 minus 2/3 is 1/3. And then 3 over 2 pi minus 2/3 is 5/6, and so on. And this one, they also cut into 6 places. And see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it was good to go. So again, it starts off at negative 2/3 pi over 3. So that is 4 out of 6. So negative 4 out of 6. So I've got to go over negative 4 tick marks out of the 6 that they gave you between 0 and pi. And it started at 0. And the next one then was negative pi over 6, 1.5. And then I counted 1, 2, 3. It was 3 apart. So again, I count over 3, count over 3, count over 3. And then I just connected it all together. Number 6, the y is multiplied by negative 2 on this one because it's outside of it. So the y is multiplied by negative 2 for all of the sine numbers up here on the top. Here were the numbers for sine. So all of them were multiplied by 2, negative 2. And then for the x, it's 3/4 for the b value. So 2 pi divided by 3/4. Remember, the period is 2 pi divided by b. And b is 3/4. And 2 divided by 3/4 is 8/3 pi. So that means that we are going from 0 down to 8/3 pi because that's one full period of the function. And then thinking about it, counting by the tick marks, you got to divide that by 4. So 8/3 times 1/4 means that each tick mark is 2/3. So it starts at 0, plus 2/3 takes you to 2/3 pi, plus another 2/3 is 4/3, plus 2/3 is number 2. And then plus 2/3 is 8/3. So that's how I got all the new tick marks. And they also cut this one into 6. It started off at 0, 0, and then 2/3, which again, 2/3 is 4 out of 6 when you change it to being out of the number 6. So I counted over 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and went down negative 2. Then I counted over 4 more, counted over 4 more, and then just filled it all in together. All right, so number 7, Number 7, they put everything all together for you. Wasn't that nice of them? So only thing that happened on this for the y is that it's multiplied by a half. So all my y values got multiplied by a half for the sine. Here's the original sine right here. So y equals sine x. All those are the original numbers. All the y's had to be multiplied by a half. And then for the x, again, you got to pull that out when it's like this, and you got to divide the whole thing by the number 2, factor it out, so that makes it 2x minus pi over 4. So it has a phase shift, and it also has a b value. So the period on it, 2 pi over b, the period of the whole thing is pi. And then on top of that, it has a phase shift right pi over 4 because it's negative pi over 4, so you got to do the opposite and add pi over 4. So the graph starts at the number pi over 4. And then from there, you got to use the tick marks. And the tick marks would be the period divided by 4. And the period for this function, again, was pi. So it's pi over 4. So each and every time you're adding pi over 4. Again, the whole thing shifted right pi over 4. So that is your starting point. And then you add pi over 4, which takes you to a half pi, and then add another pi over 4, 3/4 pi, plus pi over 4 is pi, and then it ends at 5 pi over 4. They were kind again. They split this up into fourths for you, 1, 2, 3, 4. Super kind of them. And so at pi over 4, so 1/4 pi right here was 0. And then at a half pi, it went up to the number 1/2. And again, that just went over 1 tick mark. So I'm going to go over 1 tick mark and back, and 1 over, and I just follow that harmonic wave that it's supposed to make. The next one, this one has the y. 2 things happened to the y here. The y got multiplied by -2, and 2 was added to it. So for all the cosine numbers, here are the cosine. Cosine starts at 1, ends at 1, in between it's -1. Honestly, I would write this original numbers down for sine and cosine every time, and then you'll know them, which makes it a lot quicker when you take a test. In college, they really will time you on your test, and you don't get extra time. They're not going to sit around and wait for you to get it done. What they like to do, the professors, my son has told me, both my sons have told me, they just get up and start walking out. And they say, if your test isn't in my hands by the time I walk out the door, it's not going to get graded. And you have nothing else to do but to hop up as quick as you can and hand them your test. It is timed. You don't have all day to do it. You don't get to have, you got to get quick on this stuff. You can't sit there and play all day on your calculators and try to figure out what the numbers are. So anyway, get to know what cosine is for the original numbers. Get to know what the sine is for the original numbers. All right, so the y is -2y plus 2. The period got messed up again on this one. So again, using the formula 2 pi over b, it'd be 2 pi divided by 2/3, which is 3 pi. The tick marks then would be 3 pi divided by 4. You take the period and divide by the number 4 to get the tick marks. And again, it starts off at 0 this time. It didn't have a phase shift at all. And then add 3/4 each and every time to get these new numbers. So it started 0, 0, and it went over 3/4 or 3 tick marks out of the 4 that Alex made. And when we go over the 3/4, it's up to 2, and then I counted over 4, and connected them all together. We're on number 9. All right, so on number 9, the whole, all the questions now start to repeat again. And this one's one from a past homework you have. It was a simple question. It wanted to know what the period was. The period, you got to use the pi over 3, and period is 2 pi over b. So 2 pi divided by the b, which is pi over 3. So 2 pi times 3 over pi. When you divide, remember, you change it to multiplication, you flip it over. So that makes the number 6. Cancel out the pi's. And then the amplitude is the number in front, and so the amplitude of it's 4/3. Again, the rest of the questions are all similar questions, just new numbers in them that Alex does. All right, good luck on all of them. Request additional Zoom time with me this week if you still have questions, and we can work one out together. You can share your screen with me. The teacher just has to allow you to just share your screen. All right, you guys have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.